And we are live. Welcome to CAD Live, and welcome to a very special guest, Mr. Jack Napier.
The crowd goes wild. Thanks for having me again, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Crowd is going wild.
Especially with this book.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me. And ENS says it's Pirate Jack and he's back. And Antonio says only a little bit. I'm not sure what he's referring to there, but perhaps it's a reference to the size of your genitalia, Jack. I don't know. But anyway,
not fair.
thanks, guys, for joining the stream. If you're joining this stream live, and thank you for tuning in. If you are coming to this on the replay, you are very much loved. You're very much appreciated. You're in the right place. And today we're going to continue looking at this book, The Art of Seduction, by Robert Greene, but obviously Jack's here as a guest, so we're both going to be delving into this and getting into some of the intricacies of this, and in particular, seductive character types. Okay, because what Robert Greene talks about in the first section of this book is your own personality, basically, and how you can leverage that in order to become an effective seducer. So that's what we're going to be talking about. All actionable stuff. This is not meant to be abstract. The whole point of this is to sort of bring the Robert Greene book to life so that guys can actually use it in their game. Because I think in this book, and I'll ask you, Jack, what you think in a second, but I think in this book, this is, in one sense, this is quite an intellectual book. Oh, he's got his own copy as well. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful.
I've got the hardcover. I'm flexing on you now, by the way.
Absolutely. Look at this cheap version. In some ways, this is quite an intellectual book, or at least not intellectual. That's the wrong word, but it's sort of removed from the practicalities. It's not saying, right, go up to the girl and go up to the bird and then say this and then say that and then Bob's your uncle sort of thing. It's much more rarefied and cerebral than that. But for me, there's just a ton of actionable stuff in here. And when I read it, I was just like underlining, going, yep. That works. I know that works. So for me, there's just loads of gold in here that we need to show to the guys. What do you think, Jack?
I love it. I absolutely love the book. Not just because, well, a lot of people think that this book is just between male-female dynamics, but it actually goes into seduction overall. You are being seduced every day by a multitude of things.
Certainly when they watch this show, they are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, guys, keep it down. Keep it down. For the girls watching, keep it in your trousers.
Exactly.
Easy. But be it politicians, be it marketers, be it even in your grocery store, whatever, you are being seduced daily. And he goes very deep in the psychological aspect of that. And that's why I love about this as well. And it's the second book of Robert Greene I've ever read. 48 Laws of Power is my number one favorite book of all time. I'll be very honest about that. So when I found Art of Seduction, I knew what I was kind of getting into because, 48 Laws of peak Machiavellian, in all honesty. But it's more like a sword and a shield with and against it. So with Seduction, I kind of knew what I was expecting, but I didn't know he would have gone this deep into it.
Yes, he goes really deep, as they say. So prepare, guys, to go really deep as we get into it. So,
hello, boys.
Jesus. No, you're absolutely right. I'm a big fan of 48 Laws of Power. I've read all of his books now. I think I've now read all of them, and they're all fantastic. He's just, what I like about Robert Greene, right, is that he looks like a very mild-mannered chap when you see him being interviewed and pictures of him. He looks like a bespectacled, kind of polite gentleman, and I'm sure he is. But his books are based as fuck, really, aren't they? He's very, very Machiavellian, very amoral. It's very sort of like, and I think that's what appeals to such a big audience with his stuff, because it's very sort of like, look, this is how things are. This is how the world is. People are going to do nasty things. They're going to screw you over. These are some of the strategies that they use, and use them or not, it's up to you, but this is how things really are. And I really like that about 48 Laws of Power, and there's a certainly a strong element of that in the Seduction book as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I am like, if you remember 48 Laws, that is, I believe that's Law 27, reinvent yourself. which
Right.
fits
Yeah.
perfectly with the seductive types. Because a lot of people will say that personality is stagnant and set in stone. This is just the way I am. I don't
Yes.
feel like doing this. I don't feel like doing that. But actually, personality can be molded. Characteristics can be taught, can be unlearned even. And
Mhm.
especially with the seductive types. Now, some will resonate more with you than others, and some don't. So let's say siren won't really resonate with a man, at least in my humble opinion. But let's say I myself relate a lot to the charismatic for some odd reason. Even though a dandy, I couldn't care less. But in all honesty, if I had to pick one for you, I'd say dandy.
Well, I really like. No, thank you. I really like the dandy, and I also really like the rake. Actually, and we're going to be talking about the rake today because it's the second one that he goes through. The charismatic, I have to say, the charismatic, I didn't gel with as much. I quite liked elements of the star, and what other ones did I sort of gel with? Let's just have a quick look, just so the guys know the characters that he goes through. In fact, I've got them here. So the characters, what he says is there are 9 different seductive character types. And by the way, this can relate to women as well as men. So we're looking at this from a male-centric perspective. But equally, some of these are really pertain more to women than men, particularly the siren. Okay, so the first one is the siren, which he talks about an abundance of sexual energy and guys getting drawn into that. Then he talks about the rake, which is this, well, rake's kind of a well-used word in terms of seduction anyway, but it kind of means a character who, and we'll talk about this in more detail in a second, but who adores the opposite sex and who makes that sort of infectious and draws them in through that. Then you've got something called the ideal lover, which is pretty much me to a T. I'm only joking, but that's somebody who has this aesthetic sort of sense around sex and love. Then you've got the dandy, somebody who plays with image. Then you've got the natural, somebody who's spontaneous and open. Coquettes, people who are very self-sufficient and cold. They can back off. They don't need anybody else. And by the way, push-pull is a very important element in all of game. And I think that really comes through very clearly in the whole book. Charmers, who know how to, they're social animals. They know how to please people. They know how to sort of beguile people. Charismatics, who have unusual confidence in themselves and who have that aura surrounding themselves. And then stars, who are ethereal and mysterious. So the way that I've obviously read the whole thing a number of times, and what you find is that 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of these will really resonate with you, and you'll think, okay, I get that. That is me. And it's really helpful in terms of thinking about yourself as a seducer or as a guy who's going out to meet women, because once you've decided what your character archetypes are, then you could consciously go with them and sort of lean into them more. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes, I 100% agree. Because as you just mentioned it, like the dandy likes to play with his exterior more and things like that. Even though I just mentioned like couldn't care less about dandy, it's not even true. I do like to play with the exterior more. Like look at it as peacocking. And the less extreme version of peacocking, like look at the rings, the watch, things like that. It's all a sort of form of dandyishness. Shoes, you and I both like Jeffrey West's.
Absolutely.
Greatest shoes on the planet. I mean, I have never seen any man nor woman wear better shoes than Jeffrey West's.
They are very good shoes. I should get some more really at some point. There's another really great shop on that street, because I think that's in the Burlington Arcade. And there's another really great shop that's just on German Street called New and Lingwood. And they do just fantastic stuff. They've got all these dressing gowns in there, which are really dandified dressing gowns. And they all cost about, the average cost for these dressing gowns is about £2,500. And I'm really tempted. I would love to get one, because you know when John was wearing that Versace dressing gown on his streams, I mean those things are expensive, but they're about £500, $600, whatever, right? These things, £2,500. Okay, that's nearly $3,000 for this dressing gown, but they are so opulent, and they are the kind of thing you'd imagine Sherlock Holmes wearing, like a smoking over his suit sort of thing. And they sell things with skulls on and stuff like that, but it's all very sort of English gentleman type stuff. So they've got some really fancy stuff in there, which is very dandified. So I'm trying to actually get a face mask from there, because they sell these silk face mask things. Hasn't turned up yet, but yeah. Because obviously, you know, in the Great Reset, we're all being forced to wear these these things. So you may as well go extra with it, right?
Oh yeah.
But anyway, that's just a little bit of tourist information there for guys looking for stylish tips in London. But yeah, anyway, so all of these different character types. So you will find ones that gel with you, and the ones that gel with you, you can read more about them within the chapters, and then you can, as I say, lean into it. And you know, for me, like the dandy, the rake, and perhaps the star to some extent, I can really lean into those things and dial them up when I'm interacting with women. What he says is, we need to understand the parts of our character that excite other people, that excite women in this context, and then develop those. Okay, so he's very much like, everybody's got this charismatic, seductive side to them, but you've got to pull out what yours is and then hone in on that and then display that so that attracts the women that you want to get with. And then, so essentially, it's a question of working out what you are or what you best reflect, and then doubling down on that. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Work on your strengths and not per se your weaknesses. Those come later, because a lot of guys tend to focus on their weaknesses more and they're forgetting their strengths, even though if they focus more on their strengths and amplify that, they would get even greater success instead of just keep focusing on weaknesses.
Yes, absolutely. Ian says, would you say that the best seducers occupy two types? I'm mentally brainstorming some top modern game guys, and they seem to tap into at least two. Well, I think that's probably true, but I mean, I also think that just naturally you're probably going to gel with more than one, I guess.
Oh, absolutely, because you need balance when it comes to that. Let's say the charmer. Nobody will trust a 100% charmer when he has nothing else going on. Then it's just ass kissing. There's always a nuance to everything and to all kinds or to all sorts of these things. You need to have nuance in them. You need to variate between them. Even Robert says that, like, not everyone might resonate with you, but at least pick something from everything that relates to you. Some more than others, but at least something from everything.
Yeah, exactly. And we can talk a little bit about the siren now, because that's the first one he goes through, and or the first one that he covers in the book. And unfortunately, the siren is, for our purposes, probably the least useful one, because it really is a female archetype, isn't it? I mean, I was
a bit more cleavage.
Lovely. There's a couple of people asking actually about the QAnon shaman headgear that you were wearing last time. Have you retired that now, or have you...
No, it's up there. It's up there.
Yeah, I suppose you don't want to get caught up in those people who were on. you don't want the FBI knocking on your door, do you? So you got to be a bit careful.
No, absolutely not. Like, at first when you tweeted it out, I was like, God damn it, Troy! But just roll with it.
I'm sure. Well, that guy's been arrested now, so I'm sure you'll be okay.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he?
I think so. Yeah, apparently he demanded a vegan diet, and in where he's being held, and they actually accepted and decided, and they're giving him a vegan diet, which is very nice of them.
And he lived with his mom as well, something like that.
Probably. I think so. Yeah.
It's like, what? Like, are we sure this guy was on the conservative side? Like, sounds more like an Antifa member to me, but
people have said that. People have been saying, look at this guy. He doesn't look like a Trump supporter and everything else. But the thing is that he was well known before last Wednesday for attending QAnon rallies and being around that scene. And they are they're certainly a predominantly Trump supporting conspiracy theory. So I think that he was bought into that stuff for sure. I don't think it's just all a set up and a fake, because I'd actually heard of him, because I follow a bit of the QAnon debunk guys. I'd actually heard of this guy before last Wednesday. So I don't think it's being faked as far as he's concerned, if you see what I mean. I think he is just on board with all of that QAnon stuff. But the thing is, there's a bit of a crossover actually between people who are into the cube theories and people who are into sort of new agey type stuff. So you do get these kind of hippie-ish new agey people who are like, yeah, man, it's all about love, it's all about energy and oneness, man. And Yeah, and then they get into all of the deep state Q stuff as well.
Haven't gotten laid once in 2 years, but it's all about the love.
Exactly. It's all about the love. It's all about energy, man.
Get that vibe going.
It's all the Pat Stedman stuff, really. You know, that sort of slightly hippie-ish kind of like, yeah, guys, it's all about chakras and crystals and energy, and you know, it's all about chakras and crystals and energy and Donald Trump. You know, as if those things all fit together really well. But I don't know.
I should really follow him to get in on the joke more, but I just have so much better things to do. Like, I engaged with him once on Twitter, and he said I had 1,000 cock stare. I was like, mate, piss off. You wouldn't know since you're sitting next to one every day. I'll just keep it at that.
Well, I mean, you know, like his only comeback to anybody is to imply that they are homosexual, and that's really it. You know, that's the only comeback.
Is he black pill? I didn't know that.
That's the only argument he's got. That's the only argument these guys have got. It's like, yeah, I can't actually logically answer that or refute that, so therefore I'll just pretend that you're homosexual, and that will do. That's his go-to line, basically. So, I mean, he was calling it, like, you know, that Culty Bra guy.
Oh yeah, the 6'4" snowboarding, snow skiing, MMA fighting. Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, well, he says that he's gay. Which I mean, you know, like if he, I mean, maybe he is, and if that he is, then I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But I don't think so. I mean, it's just such an odd thing that these people do to use it as a slur. You know,
I mean, thanks to Culty Bra, I now see Pat Stedman as an ostrich, and I cannot unsee that. Like, that was just nail on the head. Like, yeah, he does look like an ostrich. A very ugly one.
Well, indeed. And interesting to see what happens with the 10K and whether that gets
100K even.
Well, he owes Culty Bra 10K.
No, 100.
No, he bet to some betting companies the 100K.
Oh, it's all. Oh, I thought it was to Culty Bra 100. Oh,
no, he bet 10K to Culty Bra. Anyway, for people who aren't on Twitter here, we're getting into lots of Twitter gossip, which is not very useful. So let's crack on and talk about the siren. So yeah, as I was saying, the siren really, like, as much I reread this morning, and as you know, as much as I was trying to glean something from this that would apply to the masculine, it really does seem to be a feminine archetype. But what he talks about here is he talks about feminine energy. He says, I think the one reason it's worth touching on the siren, just we won't spend hours on it, but just briefly, is because it might be helpful in terms of thinking about the women that you're interacting with. Are you being drawn in by a siren? And I certainly have in the past. And what he says is basically that the siren, with that feminine sexual energy, offers this kind of total release from responsibility for the guy. It offers him pure pleasure, this really sexually charged realm. And the guy has to maintain his masculinity. He has to do serious stuff. He has to go out there and fight and build things and all of that kind of stuff. And what this is saying is the feminine offers him something completely different from that. It's a complete escape into sex, sexuality, pleasure, whatever, right? And so the woman who embodies that, and he talks about a few women who embody this. And the first one he talks about is Cleopatra. And he also references Marilyn Monroe later, but he talks about Cleopatra, and he describes how she arrives rolled in a carpet to be presented to Caesar, and they unroll this carpet, and then Cleopatra comes out, and she's like really hot. She's like 21. She's in the prime of her youth. She's really, really hot. And Cleopatra is like, she is one bad bitch. And he is like really on board with her, and he falls madly in love with her. And she does all this stuff to keep him interested. And this is a key thing as well. You know, she dresses up in different outfits. They have orgies. They have probably threesomes, foursomes, sevensomes, all this kind of crazy stuff. And she'll wear different outfits. She'll embody different archetypes and all this kind of thing. And Green makes the point that is keeping him on the hook because, of course, men like variety. And she's satisfying his demands for variety, but in the one person. And also, she plays hot and cold with him as well. So just when he's like, oh, God, this is really some bad bitch. I'm really on board with this girl. Then she'll back off. And this is one of the central lessons of the whole book. It's that backing off where attraction is created.
That coquetry. so to say.
Yeah, and actually, he goes into it more actually in the chapter The Coquette, but it's echoed throughout a few of the chapters, I think. I mean, have you ever fallen for a girl of this kind?
Yeah.
No.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah. There is one that comes to mind. And indeed, like when it came to the sexual experience and things like that, that was what got me on the hook. Like, they are insane in bed and they'll do anything to please you, and they will let you do anything to them that pleases you as well.
Do you think actually could this be getting close? Because actually, so interestingly, Suleiman, hello Suleiman, thank you for tuning in. He says Cleopatra was ugly and inbred, and actually, a little bit further into this, Robert Greene does say that representations of her now she shows that she wasn't actually necessarily the best looking.
Nope.
It's not necessarily about that, is it? It's about the fact that she beguiled him sexually. And we know that in real life, right? It's not always necessarily the best looking girls that really hook us in.
Mm-hmm. Like, she does Cleopatra. Well, first of all, let's say one thing: she was thin and fertile, which in that day and age, like, and with all men, that's the one thing we're looking for: is she thin and is she young? So she got that for going for her. Then, second of all, with Caesar and Mark Antony, I believe was Mark Antony right after Caesar, something like that.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, Antony was the next.
Yeah, both great men of the state, always on the warpath, always busy. Enters Cleopatra, who gives them all their desires, all the things that they want.
Yeah.
And as soon as they, like, let's say the hedonistic part is fulfilled, they seek an emotional bond as well. And that's where the real magic of Cleopatra and girls like that come in. It's then they back off. Then they're like, yeah, you know what? That sexual stuff, then I don't care about that.
It's true.
I want to hook you emotionally. And when they have you there, that is hell on earth when you're emotionally invested as a man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're completely right. And I'm actually thinking of a girl I had a relationship with years ago who actually was very attractive, who actually was very physically attractive.
Yeah,
as
same
well.
here.
She was really my type. So she was really attractive physically, but also she had this slightly. And what I was actually going to ask you just before was, do you think this is sort of similar to when we talk about BPD girls, or like girls with personality? Sorry, BPD girls with personality disorders. Do you think Cleopatra could have been something like that?
I was thinking about it, to be in all honesty, but I don't want to give BPD the credit that it doesn't earn, because there's a difference between BPD and being mentally insane.
Yeah.
And knowing the game. And a lot of girls who men think are BPD are just guys who are overly invested in a girl like that. And I know he gets a bad rap sometimes, but Tate is right about this one when he says that whole BPD stuff is just overblown whining of guys who don't know how to handle a woman. Now, I won't say BPD doesn't exist, because it does. There are chicks out there who are very mental, and you have to watch out for that. And that is not in the whole coquetry sense. No, these chicks get violent. That's BPD. This is just hardcore knowing how to play the game and how to emotionally play a man into getting him what to do. No, getting him what you want him to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I think actually the BPD thing gets overplayed a little bit in this space. Every other day you get some guy going, "Oh man, I was dating a BPD girl," and it's like, well, I mean, the way that they tell it, it will be as if every woman on the planet is BPD, which arguably, I suppose you could say is the case. But I mean, come on, like there are nuances to this. There are some people who have a serious mental disorder, and there are other people who just, there are lots of, and as you say, it's also down to the guy. The guy gets massively invested with the girl. That triggers something in her, and that creates a toxic mess in the relationship. And that's not necessarily all down to her. That's just the relationship as it's established.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's the whole thing with BPD. Like, I remember, and this was my first girlfriend, and she was psychologically, I mean, that was just, I'm glad it was my first girlfriend, because then I had the worst Like, well, we'll start with the worst first, sort of say. She wanted me to break up with my friends and spend more time with her. And if I didn't do that, she'd break up with me. Things like that. She threatened things like that. But also, when there was one instance, I didn't comply with something, and she ran a knife through the shirt I was wearing.
Ooh, crazy.
Now I look back on it, like I should have just walked away way earlier, because there were instances before the knife incident that I could have walked away, but I didn't. So now I'm wondering, like, whose fault is this really? Like, okay, maybe she was mental, but why the hell did I stay?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's, I mean, without second guessing all the details, that is, you get into sort of codependent situations, don't you?
Yeah,
in relation
that
to
too.
that. And it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other in many cases. So, so yeah. I just want to bring this one up. Jamal says, yeah, classic. Calling anything against mainstream authority a conspiracy theory. You better have a talk with Rollo. The problem, though, with Q specifically is that everything that Q's predicted has been wrong for the last 4 years. I mean, the first or second Q drop said Hillary's going to get arrested and taken to Gitmo, and that didn't happen. And that set along a train of predictions that failed to come true right up until today. I mean, if you remember last year, they were saying that there was going to be this storm when all the Democrats were going to get arrested and taken to Guantanamo Bay. That was meant to happen last Easter. Pat Stebbins was going on about that. It was meant to happen on the 10th of April, I think, because that was the Donald Trump's initials, and it's all, didn't happen. Then they were saying there was going to be a landslide victory for Trump. Didn't happen. Then they were saying the Supreme Court was going to overturn the election results. Didn't happen. Then they were saying the Pence was going to play the Pence card. Didn't happen. Now they're saying, it's just the list of things that it gets wrong are endless. So look, I don't believe anybody should buy everything that the mainstream media says. Absolutely not. But equally, I don't think we should buy into everything that some joker with a YouTube channel says, or some idiot with a Twitter feed says, right? You've got to check all of your sources. And if you've got a source where everything they say is basically wrong, then I would suggest it's probably not the best source.
Alex brings up a good point, Alex Schmidt. Even Alex Jones is claiming that QAnon was wrong. I mean, when you've pushed it that far.
Well, yeah, exactly. Although I think my understanding of that is, I don't really follow Alex Jones, but my understanding of that is a lot of the stuff he says is very similar to QAnon. And so really, it's a bit like, somebody said it's a bit like Coke criticizing Pepsi. Do you know what I mean? It's like those are the competitors. So, whatever. But anyway, all of that being said, he then goes on and talks about Marilyn Monroe as well. And when you think about Marilyn Monroe, I mean, again, I personally, I never thought she was the greatest looking woman on the planet. But I mean, I guess maybe for the time she was like up there as a 9 or a 10 or whatever. But she was certainly a very sexualized woman, and she had that thing, and he talks about this, where she had that almost babyish voice. So like "Happy Birthday, Mr. President," when she sang that song, and she sang with that breathy, like childlike voice. And he said that there was that sort of juxtaposition between her seeming innocence and her sexuality that really got guys riled up. So it's the way that women will use this sort of shape-shifting sense to draw guys in, and I think we can all identify with that, right, to some extent.
It's women who know to play the game. A great fictional example would be Irene Adler from the Sherlock Holmes series. Not necessarily the book variant, because in the book she doesn't have that big of a part, but mostly the TV series version. I don't know if you know it.
Which version? With Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, let's say that one. The one with Robert Downey Jr. as well, but I think Laura Pulver is it? Yeah, Laura Pulver played that part great. But that's a good example of a siren as well. She knows how to play. Yes,
absolutely, and she knows what pushes men's buttons and will draw them in effectively. So, and then he talks about, he also talks about the notion of danger, actually. And he says that, and we know that danger is attractive. Danger is attractive to men and women. And we'll talk about danger as far as women are concerned as we get more into this. But he talks about danger, even death. He talks about the way that these women will, and a siren, of course, the siren from the myth was they were these women who were on the rocks singing. And they would draw the sailors in. They singing with their beautiful voices. So they draw the sailors in, and then the sailors would be dashed. The ships would be dashed on the rocks, and they'd all perish. So there's this element of danger underlying it as well. And I do remember that very clearly with this girl. And this is like going back, I think 10 years now. Actually, it's quite a long time ago. But I was seeing this girl. And she actually had a boyfriend at the time. It was a very messy situation. But I was sort of the other man. You know, I was seeing her secretly, and we meet up and go to hotels and have sex. And it was all very intense and kind of exciting and passionate. But I also recognized, even as I was in it, that it was screwing me up in many ways. And it was sort of dangerous. But that, even in a funny way, that added to the intrigue of it, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is what makes it, I wouldn't say special, but that's what makes it exciting. You know it's wrong, but you want to do it because it's wrong.
Exactly.
That is the one thing that makes her so attractive as well, because it's wrong. And every fiber in your being says, don't do it. But your mind is like, no, we're going to do this. You only live once. Fuck the West. Let's go.
Exactly. To hell with the West. Don't worry about it. It's falling down anyway. So don't worry. Yeah. So look, it's that sense of the forbidden as well, you know, and all of these things. Well, as I say, the siren archetype is very much a female archetype, and I'm scratching my head to think how guys could take this on board, and I'm not sure that we really can, except to say that some of these same things, they do apply the other way around. You know, the forbidden, that sense of danger, that sense of the taboo, all of those things are really like catnip for women as well. And in fact, Green goes on to talk more about that later in the book.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's more, in my opinion, that was more the rakish character. Like, you have the female siren is an equivalent to the male rake.
Okay.
That's how I always interpreted that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, let's move on to the rake then, because that is the next archetype that he's got in the book. So the rake is interesting because I really identify with the rake, and I've definitely done this. I've definitely used this rakish stuff in my dating game career. But on the first sight, the rake may seem to be a bit counterintuitive to some people who've been brought up on game content, because what he says, I mean, let's read out the introduction at the beginning. He says, a woman never quite feels desired and appreciated enough. She wants attention, but a man is too often distracted and unresponsive. The rake is a great female fantasy figure. When he desires a woman, brief though that moment may be, he will go to the ends of the earth for her. He may be disloyal, dishonest, and amoral, but that only adds to his appeal. That line is important there, by the way. Unlike the normal cautious male, who holds back, the rake is delightfully unrestrained, a slave to his love for women. There is the added lure of his reputation. So many women have succumbed to him, there has to be a reason. Words are a woman's weakness, and the rake is a master of seductive language. Stir a woman's repressed longings by adapting the rake's mix of danger and pleasure. So again, the word danger comes into play, which is interesting. But the reason I say this could be counterintuitive, and that guys are going to say, well, hang on a minute, is that what this is basically saying is that he really desires women. He really desires women, and he pursues women. Now, some guys are going to go, well, wait a minute, though, but surely you said you have to be aloof. You have to be alpha. You have to be like standoffish and let her come to you. So how do those things go together?
Well, why are we here?
Because I'm trying to sell some books.
No, I mean, you and I, like the manosphere. Why is the manosphere here? For all its points and purposes, what is the main reason?
To help guys achieve intimacy with women.
Bingo. What do men want? Sex. Above all else, we want to get laid. Why is Elon trying to get to Mars? To impress the bitches. In all honesty, that's it. Why do we want to achieve money? to get the bitches. Gains
Gr-
the
Gr-
bitches.
Grimes, would you?
Grimes?
Yeah, you know Elon's.
Oh, I don't know. Would I? I don't know what she looks like. I know she's a bit of a goth chick, which I could get into, but I don't know, man.
She's kind of kooky looking, but I think she's
That's got to be good.
absolutely, absolutely.
Go to the ends of the earth. Like, it's kind of acta non verba. Like, a lot of guys would wear their heart on their sleeves. Like, during the first date, I love you. I care for you. I want to do everything for you. But the guy who's aloof verbally, but does act in a way, like his actions reflect that he cares, yet his speech plays the game. So that's kind of how I always interpreted that. Because I mean, play with her, you know, like what was it again? Jack, does this dress make me look fat? Not more than usual. She looks at me like, what do you mean? Like, verbally, I play with her.
Yes.
But I do walk next to her. I do want her to hold my arm, things like that. She knows he's got my back. I wouldn't say go to the end of the world, sort of say, you can exaggerate that. But that's kind of how I interpret that. Like, verbally, you can play with her, as you should. That's why it's called game. But like, in the physical, with your actions, you show that you actually care. Even though you cheat, and I've said this before, me sleeping with somebody else doesn't mean I don't love you. Which not everybody always agrees with me, especially the married types, but it's true.
Well, they're married and they don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit selfish, isn't it? If they're married and they don't agree that you're sleeping with someone else.
Oh, no, not like that. I mean, there are married people who don't agree with me on that. But,
I see. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
I've dated a girl for about 2 years, and in the meantime, I slept around. But I told her, like, well, you're the only one who's sticking around and who I can actually have a conversation with. Well, so that's a plus. But yeah, when I had the opportunity, I just went for it.
Well, there is that very masculine thing, and maybe some women who are watching would argue that it's feminine as well. But there is certainly that masculine thing where you can develop a very deep bond with somebody when you're in love with her, and she means everything to you. But guys have still got that inherent desire for variety, and those things don't actually completely cancel each other out, as some women and some people might think. It's sort of like, well, if you want to sleep with somebody else, then you obviously don't love me. And that's actually not the case, right? No. Because the two things are somewhat different. Deep love and wanting to sleep with somebody are not the same thing, and they can coexist alongside one another. And of course, that's what you see with what we over here in Britain call like the French kind of model of, a powerful guy who's married and he's perhaps got a family and whatever, but he also has a mistress on the side, and that seems to be completely accepted because that's just how guys are.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we are indeed. Like, at a certain point, let's say you're married, well, your wife hits menopause and things like that. You're a powerful man. You love her, like, you have the emotional connection, but you still have your needs, and she just can't meet them. Well, you gotta have to do that somewhere else. And I hear them already. What about women? What about polygamy? Blah, blah, blah. First of all, men and women have sex for different reasons. It is not the same. It never was. It never will be. Like, a man can sleep with a different woman and still be loyal to his wife, like, emotionally. When a woman does that, all emotional barriers have been crossed. The man she was loyal to no longer exists. So no, it is not the same.
Yeah, indeed. That's slightly going off on to a slightly different to a slightly different area here, but I do agree, and I took us in that area, and I do agree with what you're saying. But
QAnon agrees.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it is different for men and women, and I think that men in particular have that need for variety, and therefore they are, sex and love are separated, really. I mean, it's not, just because somebody can sleep with somebody else, it doesn't mean they don't love the person number one. But in terms of the rake and what he's talking about here, so you see, what really strikes me is he's very clear that this is very much in the moment. So you're pursuing the girl, and you are showing that you're really into her. You're really you're like, oh my god, I just desire you so much. I can't take my eyes off you. You are incredible. But it's very much in the moment, and that I think is the important thing. And he also says, so he says, when he desires a woman, brief though that moment may be, he will go to the ends of the earth for her. So yes, he will go completely ridiculously crazy and over the top, but it's only in that moment, and that moment may be very brief. The thing about Robert Greene is he is a great writer, and words are very, very important. So we have to look at the text quite carefully to understand what he's saying, because it's not he hasn't just dashed this off in between, going to McDonald's or something. This is, it's quite carefully considered. So it is very much momentary, and then he says the thing about he may be disloyal, dishonest, and amoral, but that only adds to his appeal. Now, I really identify with this because when I was out and about in the clubs, and going on dates and things like this, whenever I've gone on a date with a girl, I'm sitting there in front of the girl, and this just happens for me naturally. I don't know if it's just me or if it happens for you, but usually because I'm feeling a bit horny, and I'm attracted to her and everything, I'm looking at this girl and I'm thinking, yeah, she's. I'm really into her. I'm really, and I'll look at her. Well, you almost create that sort of bubble between the two of you where it's just you and her. It's just you and her, and it's very sort of intimate. It's very close, and it's just like, and in that moment, I am genuinely feeling this woman's amazing. This is incredible. I mean, love perhaps is too strong a word, but you know what I'm saying. You're feeling that great desire, and you're feeling that like she is the only girl in this. In the world for me at this precise moment.
Yeah, but desire. That's the one. That ultimate desire you can feel as a man for a woman,
and that desire in that moment is genuine. And it also has happened for me on the point of first meeting as well, on the first interaction. And when you watch some of those infields, like meeting that Polish girl and things, I think I showed on your channel. Mm-hmm. That first meeting, you're looking at the girl, you're thinking she's cute, and you're thinking, I like her. I'd like something to happen here. And in that moment, she is the only girl in the whole world for you. You're the only girl in the world, as Rihanna said. She is the only girl, but it's only in that moment. And the other thing is, of course, that you've got to look at the context as well. And the context is if your demeanor is somewhat rakish, and your demeanor would suggest that actually you're probably a bit of a player, and you probably kind of do this quite a lot. She's being hit with two things at the same time, or she's being presented with two pieces of information at the same time. On the one hand, she's being presented with the information, this dude's a bit of a player, he probably has sex with a lot of different women. And she's also simultaneously being presented with the impression, but this guy really likes me. He's really, really fucking into me. I can feel that desire. Mm-hmm. And I think it's that mix. I think it's that potent mix that he's talking about here, and that is actually very powerful when you are engaging with a woman.
It's that spinning the hamster thing. Like her imagination is your greatest tool.
Yes.
Because if you're good with her, the first thing she's going to think is, if he's this good with me, he must be good with other women.
Yes.
So, shit. He must have something on the side. And that's when that whole thing comes in, like, what are we? Where is this going? And blah, 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 blah. That can work tremendously in your advantage when you do it right. Like, I remember, like, when I didn't know this stuff, I had a girl, and we were dating for about 2 months, and all of a sudden, it's like, are you dating other girls? I'm like, yeah, a bit, and blah, blah, blah. I just flat out said it. She's like, well, I don't want you to do that anymore. Well, yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, you're right. I'm like, oh. Like, now I would have just agreed and amplified. Like, maybe you're afraid of that? Could be. Maybe there's a brunette. Maybe there's a blonde. Maybe there's a redhead. I don't know. Lost count. Why are you asking? You interested? But do it right, and you will have her imagination, and she will go utterly insane for you.
Yeah. 100%. And somebody mentioned, I think it was Ian actually, mentioned
Alex Jones again.
No, not actually. Yeah, and Alex Jones is a perfect example of this. No, he mentions Dean Moriarty in On the Road, and I haven't actually seen that. Oh, sorry, he means the book actually. Sorry, and I haven't read that for a long time, so I would need to read that again to assess that. But he mentions Russell Brand in the old days, and I think Russell Brand is absolutely a great example of this. And Russell Brand, of course, crosses over into the dandy as well, and probably the star and maybe the charismatic. I mean, he goes across a few of them. But yes, with this, I think this is absolutely right, because you will see, and maybe I'll get a video for next time, but we can show it. But you will see videos of Russell Brand, particularly back in the early days, the older days, and he will be sitting there with a woman. And there's some really good videos of him flirting with women on TV, like live on TV, or presenters or newsreaders or whatever. And he just fixes her with that look, and it's like, and he'll say something like, "Oh, you're so sexy," or whatever he says. And in that moment, and then the girl melts. She's like, "Oh my god!" And in that moment, it's as if he's completely madly head over heels in love with her. Mm-hmm. And that is attractive to her, but at the same time, underlying that, the context is this is Russell Brand, who shagged 1,000 women or something. So she knows, on one level, she knows that he's a philanderer, that he's a bad boy. But added to that is this intense desire, and people do like it when people do like to be liked. People do like to be desired. So the two things together, it creates this really potent mix, I think, that you can leverage.
Yeah, because at that moment, he is hers.
Yes.
And that's all she cares about at that moment, because he does it right. Flirtation gets a bad rap, in my honest opinion, sometimes. Okay, we talk about game and things like that, but it doesn't mean you can't be romantic when the moment calls for it. A beta. Romanticism is beta. You're a cook. No, you dipshit. Like, women like fantasy and things like that. Like, you don't overblow it. Like, oh, I got some roses for you and pedestals on the stairs. No, it's verbally. It's verbal.
Well, yes, it is verbal. And this is the thing. You've got to balance it out, because what guys might say when they hear this thing about show your desire for her and intensely desire her, go to the ends of the earth, guys will be like, yeah, that's simping, man.
Oh, no. When I push a woman up the wall, she knows my desires for her. That has nothing to do with simping, my dear friend.
Well, guys may mistake this stuff for simping. That's the problem. But of course, it's not about simping, because it's about the context, and the context is I am a player. I am somebody who is very proficient in this area. I'm confident. I'm a bit cocky. I'm like whatever. But just in this one moment, just in this one instance, I'm beguiled by you, the woman, and you've conquered me. And that's what they like, isn't it? Because remember, and Rollo talks about this, she wants to conquer the alpha, okay? And I'm using alpha in the the sense that we use it here. She wants to conquer that guy who has who is that sexual kind of prize, if you like. She wants to feel that she's conquered him. And so it's no point, there's no good you being really simpy going like, oh, I've really fallen for you, you're amazing, and think that that's going to work, because that's not going to work. You've got to have that combination of the two things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And indeed, there's a difference between, I'd kind of want you, or you grab her by the waist and look at her in the eye and say, I want you right now. There's a difference between that.
Absolutely.
All the ladies in the crowd went wild.
Exactly. Yeah. There's people are just going crazy out there, Jack. You've got to stop doing this.
I should have looked into the camera when I did that. But Bull Rush is in there, so he'll probably move some of this. So
Bull Rush has had to take a minute to compose himself.
Keep it in your trousers, old blood.
So what else have we got? He talks about reputation a lot, and he says, and this is one of these counterintuitive things that I really like about Robert Greene. He says you want to cultivate your reputation as a degenerate. I mean, he doesn't use the word degenerate, but that's kind of what he means. He basically says, look, if you're a player, don't pretend that you're not. You don't want to shy away from that. And he goes as far as to actually coming out with the old adage, you know, your reputation is everything. And so if you're a bit of a dirtbag player, you kind of want to amplify that, because that, in terms of seduction, that's only going to do you favors. And like I say, I mean, you're not necessarily going to walk around saying, oh, I'm a player. I'm a player. I've been successful with many women. I mean, obviously, you're not going to go around verbalizing that, but you want to imply that by your presentation, the way you're dressed, your swagger, and the fact that, you know, your eye contact, your confidence, and the fact that you're good, like you said, the fact you're good with her is going to imply that you're good with other women, and you've presumably been successful with other women, right?
Yeah. So, what's your favorite comeback to that when a girl says that to you? Like, I bet you date a lot of girls, or whatever.
Well, there's two ways you can go. You either underplay it, so you're like, no, actually, I'm a virgin. I'm just looking for that right woman to marry.
Yeah.
And, you know, you do that, or you say, oh, not. Or if she says, oh, I bet you say that to all the girls, or how many girls have you said that to today? You say, oh, not many. You're only about the 300th, but you know, you were kind of cute, so I thought I'd come over. So you go one way or the other. You either agree and amplify, or you do it as a joke. You underplay it.
Yeah, I tend to. I don't know what this one is, but I get the question a lot. Like, do you have a girlfriend or something? I'm like, only on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then you just see them trying to rationalize that. Like, what does he mean? Like, huh? Like, well, yeah, well, you figure that one out. It's like, it's brilliant.
Yeah. It's a good one there. I mean, he then talks about another historical example. He talks about the Duc de Richelieu, and who he describes as being a blasphemous seducer, a heartbreaker, and regardless of that, he pursues this Mademoiselle de Valois, and she finds it completely thrilling, because this guy, even though he's a bad boy, even though he's got that reputation, his reputation precedes him, you know, suddenly he's really into her. Suddenly he's all over her. And she is like, that blows her mind. She's like, whoa, this is amazing, because this guy who's been desired by all these other women, because remember, he's got that reputation, all of a sudden he's just fixated on me. He's obsessed with me. And that excites her all the more. Okay, so
isn't that the story where he climbs her window or something like that? Is that one where her father warned her about him?
So is that the one where no, isn't? I'm not sure if it is actually. I could be wrong. Is that the one where he moves into the house next door and then like burrows through the the attic or something? I mean, guys, don't try this at home. I wouldn't.
No, absolutely not. Or is this the one where he gets into the house, sleeps with the maid, gets busted, and then makes a threesome out of it?
Oh, yeah. There's a great story about that. I think that might be further on, but yeah.
That is very rakish. Very.
There's some crazy stories in this book. I mean, you guys think, you know, you think, why can't we go back to traditional values like it were in the old days? But I tell you what, some of these dudes in the 17th century, it was like, you know, it was party time back then. It really, really was. But there's a great line in Richelieu's, I think it's kind of his diary or his autobiography or something. And there's a great line here. It says, the man who has had experience of conquests nearly always succeeds, where he who is only timid and in love fails. And I think that is really, really important. The man who has had experience of conquest nearly always succeeds, where he who is only timid and in love fails. Well, that's a red pill right there, isn't it? That's a red pill mic drop from the 18th century.
Pretty much. It's a nice way of phrasing that, because like in love, a guy in love, when he's you and I have talked about this before. Like, do we believe in a thing called love?
What is love anyway?
Baby, don't hurt me. But when a guy is in love, completely infatuated, he does stupid things. And like, remember when you were like young and you were in love and you're like, how do I get this girl to like me? Do I need to write a note, or do I tell her friends and then her friends tell her? Like the real gooey, stupid, dumb in love. And like you and I right now, when we're like, we don't even fall in love anymore, at least not that fast. It's more like, hey, she's got a nice ass, she's got a nice face, I want to do that, and maybe I'll have a conversation with her. But the first instant why we want to talk to her is because she's hot, and we're not timid anymore, so we just go at it and like, hey, I just saw you, wanted to say hi because you look absolutely amazing, but and we go from there.
Yeah. Well, this is a real advert for boldness, isn't it? And it's also, I'm afraid, a real advert for the boldness that comes naturally when you're somebody who's had a lot of success. And of course, if you're right at the beginning of the journey, that's going to sound a bit daunting, because it's kind of like, well, how can I, if I've only maybe been with one girl or something, how can I pretend to have been a rakish lover in the past when I wasn't? And that's a separate problem. And to be honest, fake it till you make it is one of the best ways around that. But what this is really saying is, look, if you're a dude who's had loads of experience, you know, you've been with a lot of different girls, you've been very successful in that regard, that is gonna, you're likely to succeed. Where the simpy guy who's madly in love, and his feelings might be more genuine, and this is the red pill bit, that his feelings might be more genuine, his feelings might be deeper and whatever, but unfortunately that guy's going to lose out to the guy who is bold and who has had that previous success. So the lesson here, I think, really is that is the facade that you want to create, or you know, if that's you, then great, and if it isn't, and you're drawn to this rakish idea, this rakish archetype, then that's the sort of facade that you want to create.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ian mentioned it just now. Again, this is from 48 Laws of Power too. Enter action with boldness. And success breeds confidence. You need to have success to gain certain confidence. But if you want to have success, well, girls like confidence. How are you going to do that? Well, confidence also derives from mental point of origin, things like that. Do you think you are the shit? Whether you've had success with women or not, there are many other areas where you can, well, be the shit in, sort of say. But you need to have that boldness and confidence to get at least somewhere. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. So it's, you want to develop that swagger, you want to develop that sort of, I'm awesome and you're, you know, I'm just the dog's bollocks kind of. You want to have that swagger as you walk around. And look, if it's the case that, you know, you haven't had that much dating success in the past, then okay, fine. You know, that's something you're going to have to work on. But
that's her problem.
Well, no, but recognize that what is attractive is not, unfortunately, the simpy sort of like, oh my God, I just saw you and you're just so amazing. It's not like that. You've got to come at this from the frame of, I am awesome. All these women love me. I mean, that's the other thing. That's the other thing you can tell yourself, even if you haven't actually had that much success. If you could go around with the mindset that, oh, all these women love me, that's gonna just going out with that attitude and emanating that is gonna put you in better. It's gonna stand you in better stead.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have nothing to add to that, actually.
Well, indeed. So let's move on. Yeah, he talks about the distracting power that intense desire has on a woman, and you know, we've covered this already, really, but it's sort of like intense desire, I think, is like on dates and things like that. This is the thing, you've got to show that you want her. You know, like, it's all very well. We encourage guys a lot to be sort of cool and, you know, stand back and sort of, I don't know, be that kind of alpha, you know, you don't need her and all this kind of thing. And that's true in a sense, but in another sense, you've got to, as I always say, sexualize your interactions. And the way that you do that is by showing that you want her, by your eye contact, by your proximity, touch, what you talk about, how you talk, all these things. And I think that guys will sometimes pull back from that because they're actually a bit nervous about it because they don't want to put themselves on the line. Because, of course, when you show a woman that you desire her, that's risky. You're making yourself vulnerable because she could turn around and say, well, sod off, I'm not interested. So what would you say about that? Because guys have just got to be prepared to, and he talks in here, doesn't he, about having abandon, just throwing caution to the wind.
Yeah,
you've got to be prepared to do that, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, first date, you want to go for the kiss, go for it. Go for it. Well, of course, body language and things like that. You can't just turn her around and put it on their mouth. No, I mean, after a certain interaction, if you want to go for it, go for it. Do not be timid in your physicality. Kino is a great example of that. Go for it. And I mean, viewer discretion is advised. We're not advocating for non-consensual things here, struggle huggling, or whatever you want to call it. We're not doing it like that. But what I mean to say is that you give in to that certain desire and go for what you physically want. Consensual, of course, because we are on the internet and there's always someone. But that's how I interpret that. Like, don't sit there like a timid hare and waiting for her to like peck you on the cheek or whatever. No, go for it. Enable the physical.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
how I'd put it.
I agree with all of that. And of course, we're talking about consensually here because this is and it, regardless of being on the internet or not, of course that's what we mean because guys want women to want them. That's the thing. I mean, you want to trigger that unbridled desire in her, but obviously you have to be calibrated. You have to read the signs. You have to back off if it's unwanted. Then of course you need to do all of those things. But Robert Greene says here, the key is to show no hesitation, to abandon all restraint, to let yourself go, to show that you cannot control yourself and you are fundamentally weak. Interesting use of a word. Do not worry about inspiring. That goes into something slightly different. So the key is to show no hesitation, to abandon all restraint, to let yourself go, to show that you cannot control yourself and you're fundamentally weak. Now, an example of this, I remember one time I was doing a lot of like daytime approach and stuff like this. And sometimes doing more risky or socially embarrassing approaches has this effect. And I recall one time I went into there was a hair salon I used to go, and there was a cute Polish girl who worked there. And I was kind of into this girl. And I remember going in there one time to book an appointment, and there was about 3 or 4 people in there, and she was standing behind the counter, and I was being served by somebody else. And I was feeling particularly bold that day. So I was being served by one lady, and then I basically started a conversation with the other girl, even though there was, a couple of customers in the shop and some other people behind the counter and everything else. I started the conversation with the girl, and I was being very cheeky and very bold. And I was like, oh, we should definitely go for drinks sometime and blah, blah, blah. And the girl was blushing. And obviously it was a relatively high pressure social situation because she was there in front of her work colleagues. There were other customers in the store, whatever. And suddenly this dude's coming and he's basically chatting her up, But it worked. She gave me the number. We ended up going out, etc., etc. And the thing is that's the sort of thing that it's almost demonstrating. You show no hesitation. You abandon restraint. You let yourself go in that social situation. It's like, listen, I've got to do this because the implication is I just desire. I think I desire you so much that I'm going to do this anyway. Even though this is potentially embarrassing for me, and I risk getting rejected or whatever, I'm just going to do it anyway because I can't hold myself back. And surprisingly, or perhaps counterintuitively, that plays really well. That often plays really well with girls because she's like, "Oh my god, like that guy, he really took a leap of faith there. He really went, did something quite ballsy there because he liked me that much, and that can really play into your favor."
Yeah, absolutely. You bit of a shameless plug for you, by the way, but you go into that with how to be an asshole. an approacher like Chad.
Yes.
You described it perfectly there, where when you embrace your psychopathy, so to say, you just walk up to her and you go for it, no matter the circumstance. And I believe that's Paul Janka, who has a great example of that as well, like in Victoria's Secret, something like that.
Tom Torero did that. He did a video of him approaching a girl in Victoria's Secret, which I think he's taken down now. But yeah, that's definitely a high pressure. And the reason he put that video out was because he said, look, this is a high pressure situation because, of course, approaching somebody in an underwear store is seen as well, it's just kind of it feels more embarrassing, doesn't it, for obvious reasons, because it's so but he put it out to say, look, you can do this stuff and the world's not going to fall in. It's and it can play in your favor, because if you are somebody if you are prepared to risk embarrassment and even humiliation, for her, she recognizes the ballsiness of that. Yeah. And that, as I say, that can give you brownie points. That can play well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're coming up on time, but we've gone slightly over the hour, actually. But I've got a couple of minutes more if you have, Jack. I don't know.
I have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, well, we'll round up now because we basically kind of come to the end of this, really. He then goes and talks about a guy called Gabriele D'Annunzio. And he says, actually, interestingly, this guy's pretty facially unattractive. So for all you black pill lurkers, he tells this story about this guy and he goes into verbal dexterity as well. And of course, verbal dexterity, something that Russell Brand absolutely had in spades. That ability to use language in a colorful and enticing way to beguile a woman is definitely something that you should practice. And actually, I might have an upcoming course coming up on this soon, guys. Gumroad at the ready. So but no, in all seriousness, I am looking to put together a conversation skills course. So that's something that may be coming up in this quarter at some point. But he talks about D'Annunzio and his amazing verbal ability. And he says when he speaks to a woman he likes, his face is transfigured so that suddenly he becomes Apollo. His effect on women is remarkable. And so even though physically he's not that impressive, when he talks to her, and he talks to her in this really impassioned, kind of like verbally dexterous way, it almost changes his appearance. And we see this with charisma, don't we? I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you see somebody who's talking and maybe at first you think, oh, they look a bit boring, whatever. And then they're talking and they start to look physically more interesting. And this is the case with women. It can also be the case with charismatic men. They start to look physically more imposing because of the charisma that they're putting across. And so that's a really interesting point, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A lot of politicians have the same thing. They study charisma, man. They study things like this. And a good example, like when it comes to women and men, is also when she likes you, she will say you're 3 inches larger, sort of say.
Well, I could do with 3 inches more, to be honest, but
oh, can't we all? I mean, I already have a 20-incher, but come on, 23. 23 will be amazing. No, but like when she likes you, and she won't even notice you're not 6 foot. She will think you're 6'5" for all she cares.
No, she won't. No, she won't. You're just you're a scammer, Jack.
I know.
But no, I'm joking. No, I'm joking.
I'm not. No, black pillars are right. Absolutely. Like black pillars, you are 100% right. There is no hope for you left. Please keep streaming and keep doing what you're doing, people. Please.
Absolutely.
I encourage you.
He goes on a little bit about the hint of danger again. He references Byron, Lord Byron, who of course was a famous seducer. And Byron, he talks about this later in the book, so we don't need to dwell on it now, but he talks about Byron appealing to the taboo and sometimes having a hint of cruelty, that element of sadism that we talk about in Cat Academy, and all of that good stuff. So that hint of darkness, that hint of danger definitely works male to female as well as female to male, as in the siren example. And then he says that rakes generally get attacked by other men, because other men are jealous. Okay, I think we all know that. I think anybody spending time on Twitter will see that. And he basically says, look, accept it as a badge of honor. Don't try to underplay what you are or your experience or your reputation, because it's, you know, some people aren't going to like it, but so what? And he also says, if everyone was a successful seducer, the reason men hate it so much is because if everyone was a successful seducer, then society would collapse. And he's probably right about that. But this is the 80-20 divide, isn't it? This is the 20%, the top 20% dudes who are the seducers, the rakes, and who are getting all the success in the dating market. And of course, they are resented by many who feel that they can't get out of the 80%. Who are doing the right thing and wifing up a high quality woman and not having fun. So, you know, sucks to be them, I guess. But
yeah, let them have it.
But the message of this channel really, and what the reason we're doing this is because actually you can cross up it. You can, you know, if you work at it and you've got that persistence and you've got that desire, you can put yourself into that top 20%. It's really not that difficult.
Oh, absolutely. And guys mentally need to let go of the maxim that you need to be able to provide for her or know her or have cared for her to be able to sleep with her. Because that's not true. Not really. I mean, you've experienced this probably, and I have experienced this as well with girls. Within 5 minutes of meeting them, things went on. So, guys, there's a difference between the provider and the lover. Tom Torero has talked about this. Troy has talked about this. I have talked about this. Get it out of your head. There are two sides to hypergamy, and this is the fun side.
Well, it's exactly, and lover provider, of course, and alpha fucks beta bucks that Rollo talks about. I mean, it's foundational stuff, but it's absolutely true, and yeah, it's reflected in this because I mean, Robert Greene doesn't use this terminology, but basically what he's kind of saying is that the rake is the alpha in the sexual sense. The rake is the guy who's going out there and getting the women, getting the girls, and and other guys resent that. But instead of resenting it, they should look at what he's doing and learn from it, and maybe try and do it themselves.
Exactly. Instead of calling him gay, ask yourself, why is he successful, and then go for it.
Exactly. Well, listen, anyway, it's been an amazing show. It really, really has been a lot of fun going through this material. And you know, let's maybe we can continue to do these if you're happy to go through more of the Robert Greene material.
Absolutely. I love this book. It is great.
Yeah, no, awesome stuff. Well, I mean, and I can see that the guys in the chat are enjoying it. I hope everyone's getting a lot of value from this, but there is just so much gold in this book that it's, you know, it's just everybody needs to understand this stuff. So it's a pleasure going through it. Anyway, Jack, what have you got coming up this week, and where can guys find you?
So, link to my channel is now in the chat. That is a weekly podcast called Red Evening together with Rob Says, where you will hear me and the old man complain about life and the normal things that go on during the week. With work, with dating, whatever it is. And also, filthy plug, I put together an exercise performance course, which I was asked to do by my members of my YouTube channel, of the 6 most important exercises you can perform in the gym. I go through them step by step, and I also go through what you not want to do when performing these exercises. So subscribe to the channel and go check out the exercise performance course on Gumroad, please. That would be nice.
Check it out, guys. Jump on board. Now is the perfect time to do that. And as far as I'm concerned, please do hit subscribe to this channel. Give me a like, give me a thumbs up, drop a little comment below if you can. Just helps to tickle that algo so I can grow the channel, get more people on board. The other thing to say is I put this in the comments below, but I do a free daily email Monday to Friday, most days Monday to Friday. And what I'm doing is I'm actually writing up my notes for these episodes about the art of seduction and putting them into text form. So if you get on my email list, then you will be the first to receive, so that you can get the written material. I'll probably publish them on the blog at some point, but people on the email list will be the first people to get it. So if you go below, you'll see the link to that free email list. Get on the email list. And tonight, I'm sending out the first of these emails, which talks about what we were talking about yesterday in the preface, the the definition of the seducer, what it means, etc., etc. So yeah, jump on board for that free daily email list, and you'll get all of that plus loads of goodies and news and offers and freebies and stuff as well. That's it, really. Thanks ever so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Jack, for joining me. And
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Always a pleasure. And we will see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.